Hello and welcome to our second episode. Yes, our second one of Takes Up Front. We finally have a name for it here as part of the Sports Up Front Network. I know we had Mike Gigani back for the first episode. We're going to bring him back again for the revamped, sort of shorter version of Takes Up Front. New format now. Before we get to introducing Mike again, real quick, 15 minutes straight. It's going to be 15 topics that we have listed out. We'll put it into a random number generator. Whichever number comes out, that's what we're going to go with for the minute. So it could take a minute, it could take 2 minutes, whatever it is. Quick takes, quick debates, whatever it is, whether we agree, disagree, whatever it is. And at the end of these 15 minutes, Mike is going to get to plug or say whatever he wants to say. 15 seconds uninterrupted airtime and go from there. So Mike, welcome back again. And how was your week?
It was good, just working, but I'm really happy to be back on, and I'm excited to be a part of the second video as well.
All right, so also I'm in a different location today. I may be wearing the same sweater. I did wash it for all of those who are concerned that are watching. I also got some better lighting, and hopefully I am loud enough to be heard. I know I don't have a microphone right by my face like Mike does, but that's what happens when you sort of go with the AirPod movement, I guess. I didn't have any of the old style headphones to
I'd,
use.
I'd, I'd break out all reliable for the podcast.
Well, there is a reason they call it all reliable. So let me get this generator up. Let me put in the first number. All right, 1 out of 15. All right, so we're looking at number 7. For those who are looking, here is your 15 seconds, 15 minutes on the clock, and let's do this thing. So number 7, easy prediction to start off. We talked about Gary Sanchez the first time we were on here. What is your prediction? And I'll give mine after for what Gary Sanchez produces in 2021.
Well, he's definitely going to be, I think, the starting catcher going into next season. I don't think Higgy is going to be like in that starting role. He will catch for Cole, but the most of the other games will be split between the two. I say he plays in roughly half the games of the season, depending. I don't know if the season will start exactly in March, April. I think at least 120 games we played. I think he plays in 60. And during those 60 games, I say he hits 220, like a 330 on base, like 450 slugging. I want to say maybe 17 home runs and 42 RBIs.
I think when you think about what my expectations are about to be, I think I am giving him very low expectations just because he hasn't done much the last couple of seasons. Plus, like if Higgy's hitting well, I think in April, I think Aaron Boone continues to ride him out until he doesn't do well. But for me, Gary Sanchez, I think he's hovering around 200, but I'm going to have him go with 196. He's going to have a 305 on base percentage. Let's go with that. Slugging, let's go 4.5, right around there, 4.50, 4.60. Home runs is a thing that I think is going to be a little higher. I think he's going to hit about 20 home runs, but the RBIs, he's only going to have probably 43 to 44. And I just think that's because we may see him in a lot of pinch hitting opportunities, also buried in the lower part of that New York Yankees lineup. To me, I don't know how any Yankee fans feel, but as a Mets fan and a guy evaluating baseball, that I don't know if there's any confidence left for Gary Sanchez.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's definitely low, but I think you can't really get much worse than last season. So hopefully he rebounds just a little bit.
yeah, that is true. That average was very low in last season. Was it like 150 something, right?
147, even
Yeah,
better.
140. Yeah, it's bad when you're hitting the weight of like a ninth grade or eighth grade high schooler. That's really what it is. But let's move on to another number as we hit number 14. And this is one I think this is a topic you could have a lot of long conversations on. But should the 2021 season bring the expanded postseason we had during 2020?
Um, I think they should bring the expansion like back. I don't know if they should do it to the same extent. I think 16 teams is a little too excessive, especially when you saw for the first time teams under 500 make the postseason with like the Brewers and Astros. I think maybe like a 12 team format would be better. I think like the top teams would have buys, kind of like a football season. Like it'd have like the buys in the first rounds. I think if they went with that, it would bring like have more games, more revenue, which is what Manfred clearly wants, and you have more teams in the hunt.
Yeah, Manfred we've seen kind of cares more about the money aspect. He's like if the Will Ponds became commissioner of baseball, is pretty much what it was.
That'd be the
But
worst thing ever.
well, it already is the worst thing ever right now. But um, I like the 16 team format because I like the bye week idea. But the issue with that is, you know, like football, you take a week off normally between games. I know we've had some weird situations here in 2020, but we've seen with World Series teams and teams in the championship series, when they get like a week off, when they even get 5 days off, they kind of lose their steam because they're spending every single day playing games during the season. But what I would like to see from this 16 team format is the ability to maybe shrink the divisions again or expand the divisions again. You have to go either way, maybe four divisions. So now you have two division winners. You completely eliminate the wild card. So the division winners just play each other because we saw all the central teams, they were not any good. They all lost their postseason matchups. And we saw when Shane Bieber had to face a team outside of the Central Division in those New York Yankees, he ran into a lot of trouble. He struggled. And the Yankees are one of the best lineups in baseball, but that's what the Eastern Division, when it was the American League and National League this year, that was what they were full of. Good hitting offenses. You had the Mets, the Yankees, even the Phillies, the Braves, especially. There was so much talent hitting wise that and just talent overall that the central teams became a moot point once the postseason came around.
Yeah, it's just interesting to think about like I don't know if like teams like because if you have the 16 teams like winning the division, it doesn't like mean anything anymore. Like with the
Yeah,
current format, so like if they change it to something like what you're proposing, like I would be more for that. But like for the past like all like my entire life, like it's been always exciting, like hoping the Yankees win the division and like get
right.
that top spot. But if it wasn't there, then like I would be perfectly fine with them like not really going for it at a trade deadline, and it's like just coasting into the postseason because once you get there, anything can happen.
Yeah, and so one of the other things I should mention before we move on here that I would propose, and you can tell me if you like this or not, you have the four divisions, and now the top two teams in each division play that 2 out of 3 series with 3 games all being home teams going to the number one seed. But within those 5 days, the home team gets to set the schedule, meaning they can either play 3 days in a row, they can play on the first day, the third day, and the fifth day. They can set the schedule however they want within a 5 day period. And I think at least that gives it an incentive for winning your division because you get 3 home games and you get to set the schedule however you like.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea, but it's also like a lot of things that could be wrong with it. I mean, like you have to see in action to really know, but it's an interesting idea about like setting the schedule because obviously like teams with like better rotations who want the 3 days in a row, teams like the Yankees who have like guys can go 5 innings and have like that bullpen would want to space it out just to preserve arms. So
Right.
like it kind of like creates like a new strategy to baseball, which like I could get with, but like I'm not sure like how like much other people would be sold on it.
Yeah, that's the thing. You want to figure out because if you look at a team like the Rays, they would probably want that 1-3-5. If you look at a team, let's just say the Mets, if they have that big three, they probably just want to go 1-2-3 and get it over with. But let's move on to the next one here as number 11 as we hit 8 minutes left to go. This will be a quicker one. Will Francisco Lindor be dealt by New Year's Day? Will he be in an Indians uniform or will he be somewhere else?
I'm not sure. I think he's gonna be in Cleveland until after New Year's. I just think that teams are probably gonna go in the free agent market first, and like I think a lot of like the mid tier guys, especially, is what's gonna be like the biggest market from now until that time. Same thing with like it's a big name free agents. I'm not sure if any of them are really gonna sign until well after New Year's.
Yeah, that's a good point. You talked about the free agents. I know the Mets, they've been a big hunter in this offseason. They want to focus on free agents. And especially with all these teams losing so much money, they are going to want to keep their prospects. And we've seen the Indians make quite a few trades over the last couple of seasons. So I do agree with you. I think Lindor is going to stay in Cleveland. And I think if he's dealt, it's going to probably come out of desperation come March and in spring training. But let's move on to another number 6. This is a very interesting one. This one kind of divides our fanhood here. if you're the Yankees, or if you're this is number six, are the Yankees better suited for Michael Brantley, or are the Mets better suited for James McCann? Which one helps their respective team more?
I think the James McCann deal helps the Mets more, only because like the Mets need a catcher. Like that's probably one of their like the holes, I guess you can say, and they on the team, like
Yeah.
offensively and defensively. So, like,
And just running Wilson Ramos, watching
yeah,
him run was
exactly. It's an automatic double play. But like the Yankees, like they have a pretty like filled out outfield. Like they have Judge, they have Hicks, they have Frazier in the starting roles. They still have Talkman. They might bring back Gardner. It's really like four and a half, five guys. And I know they have Andrew Hart in the depth chart. Like who knows if you even go out there or if you
yeah.
even want to. But I see Brantley more as a fallback option if DJ walks. I think they're very similar hitters in the fact that they don't strike out a lot. They put the ball in play. Brantley being a lefty does help like a lot, and I think that'd be a good deal. I always thought if the Yankees don't bring back DJ, they should go after Brantley and maybe bring back Didi, put him at short, and then have like those two lefties in the lineup who are like high contact guys. I think that really like benefit the Yankees lineup. But overall, between those two players, James McCann brings more value to the team because, again, that's like a big need for the Mets.
Yeah, that's a good point there. I think the caveat here with the New York Yankees is if you don't get DJ LeMahieu back, wherever team takes him away, I think you definitely at that point Michael Brantley is more of a need because then you can use some of the assets you have. If you want to trade Andujar, you want to trade Frazier, you want to trade Talkman as well. You can at least trade him to replace that piece. Meanwhile, if you're the Mets, there's no catcher out there to trade for that's as legit as James McCann and definitely not as legit as JT Realmuto. And especially if you're the New York Mets, you had an offense that was historically one of the best of all time. I know it was a shortened season, but you have that opportunity to bolster your offense in a year where Wilson Ramos, Tomas Nido, 2 games out of Rene Rivera and Ali Sanchez gave you nothing. And you still had one of the best offenses in baseball. So I think that is definitely one of the more important moves that the Mets have to make. So let's move on to another number here. I think 14 came up already. If I am not wrong, that is true. So much for a random number generator. But number 10, another quick one here. Should the Yankees take a swing at Kyle Schwarber? You kind of went over this with the outfield situation in the last point.
Yeah, I don't think they should go after him because, like, again, outfield's like super clogged, and the Yankees have enough players like Schwarber in their lineup already that I don't know how much he would help. Even though he's a lefty, even though the Yankees have the short portion, right? Like, I'm not sure where he would play. Like the outfield, like the Yankees have to make like room for him, and like Stanton is it basically is the everyday DH, and we're paying him so much money, and he's like, still a really good player, even though he is injury prone, but there's no way Schwarber would outproduce Stanton in a full season.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing. Plus, he's a liability on defense. You can't really put him anywhere. He's definitely locked into a DH the rest of his baseball career. And of course, my thought is that this guy's a 40 home run hitter, at least in Yankee Stadium on a bad
Yeah.
season with that power. But I think when you still have guys like Brantley on the market, LeMahieu on the market, he's the last guy you want to worry about, especially when you have the thought that he might be going back to the Chicago Cubs. So number one is next. And the question that not only us fans want to answer to, the people playing the games wanted to, as should the National League bring back the designated hitter in 2021?
I think that's like the biggest no brainer. And like for baseball, like of all the things that happened with like what Manfred has done, I think that's like one of the only good ones. Like I was sick of seeing pitchers hit like in this like modern day game. Like they don't really specialize in anything but pitching, and like it was just so like I know people love the strategy, but like there's especially for me being a Yankee fan and seeing the DH, like there's every time I'd watch like a Mets game, it would just like every time like DeGrom came up, even though he's a good hitting pitcher,
Yeah, yeah.
like I just don't want to see someone hitting 180 and like maybe hit like a double once in a while happen. Like I would love to have someone who actually can produce and like deserves a spot in the lineup actually play.
Yeah, that's when I hear 180, I think back to the Gary Sanchez conversation that we were having before. But yeah, that's fantastic. And especially from the bias of myself being a Mets fan, I do not want a defense that has Dominic Smith and Pete Alonso both playing the field. As great as their bats are, I need one of them to DH, preferably Alonso. But again, pitchers are so pretty much one dimensional nowadays. And we talked about before the injuries. It is not something that you don't want to see Jacob DeGrom, for example, lose half a season because he twisted an ankle or did something else trying to leg out a ground ball to first base or whatever it is. So number 5 is next with about a minute and a half to go. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame. I'll give you my sort of picks. I don't want to say picks because I think a lot of these guys, I always like to go more than 10 on the Hall of Fame ballot. But for me, I think the guys I want to talk about, obviously Bonds, Clemens, Sosa, those are the big three for me. You can branch off if you want. But for me, I put the steroids in a different category. Maybe if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have said no. But I think it's finally time to get these guys, along with a guy like Kurt Schilling, finally into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I agree. Not so much though with Sosa. I mean, like I know like he has like one like 600, like what 609 home runs. Like he has
Yeah.
like the crazy power. But like when it comes to careers, when you see like Clemens and Bonds and like just where they rank above everyone else, like I put them in a different tier, even above Sosa, no matter how productive he was. And with Schilling, like only reason he's not in it because people just didn't like him because he acted like he wasn't too great on social media with his like all his views and everything he just said out of his mouth. But like he's gonna get in, and with no like clear cut first ballot Hall of Famer, I think this will be the year that like Schilling, Bonds, and Clemens will all get in.
Yeah, I think it makes it such an interesting thing that's going on here because you don't know what these guys are thinking. I know a lot of it's sort of biased, especially if you're biased against steroids, biased against political views. There's definitely stuff that you agree and disagree with, but at the end of the day, when you look back at the history, these guys are going to be laced in, whether it's Clemens, there's 20 strikeout games, Bonds breaking the home run record, Schilling being terrific in the postseason. Those all are going to be there. So, one last thing before we finish off here, we're about to hit the 15-minute mark if we haven't already. Your biggest surprise at the non tender deadline on Wednesday, who was given their bags and sent away? Who was your biggest surprise there?
Hands down, Eddie Rosario. Like I think that guy's like a legit player, and he's gonna find a home like easily. Like I think he might end up in like a place like maybe Chicago or Boston. Like they both desperately need like an outfielder, and like he's a good lefty hitter with power and like pretty decent average.
Yeah, that certainly surprised me too. But I did kind of see it coming because it felt like that the Twins were
Yeah,
sort of just getting tired of him. But to me, I think the biggest surprise was David Dahl. I looked at this guy. I know he had a rough year this past season, but this guy was an all-star just a couple seasons ago, just what 2019. So
yep,
he's still only what 26, I believe, and he's such a young, talented player that anybody will be glad to put him. His versatility in the outfield, his ability to hit for power, and hit for a pretty decent average as well. If I'm the Mets, there's a very cheap option for you to pick up. So I think that's definitely a big surprise to me. And I'll double down. You can join in on this one as well. Corey Knable, I know he was
yeah,
traded,
that was my next
but
one.
oh my goodness, how is this guy? How did the Brewers not want to give this guy an opportunity to come back healthy?
Yeah, he was my favorite one. I actually like made a joke on Twitter about it, like because like I got the updates and I was talking to my friend about it. And I'm like, oh, Knables was the non-tendered, and he's like, well, like no, my God, really? Like we want like he's a Mets fan. He wanted the Mets to get him. Like I want the
Right.
Yankees to get him, and then within seconds he was gone to the Dodgers. I'm just like, well, there you go.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
was a Knable sweepstakes.
to me, that was like classic Dodgers. They're going to take a risk on someone. They did it with McGee. They did it with Trinan, and they're going to turn him into something. And I think
Yeah,
that's probably what's going to happen here. So that was it. We didn't get through all 15, but we did take a good chunk. I think we got close to half of
yeah, like
them
6 or
done,
7.
6 or 7. So that's pretty solid for these 15 minutes. So now you're going to get your little 15 seconds of fame. Let me put it up
So
on the phone right here. We'll put a nice little thing on YouTube once we edit it. And here's your 15 seconds. Plug whatever you want to plug in, and your time is on.
I'm just gonna plug my the new podcast me and my friend did start. So on Twitter, follow APT underscore pod.
All right, beautiful. And you reserved some time. You could have just dabbled in anything else for the last
That's
six
all
seconds,
right.
but you know what? Short and sweet is to the point. And again, thank you, Mike, for coming on. I know
Thank
we're
you for
giving
having
you,
me.
letting you double dip here after we're filling things out for the first one. And whether you love or hate Mike, you're not going to see him next week, unfortunately. We're going to have a revolving crew of people coming on to do these takes. Of course, Mike will come back in the future, but we have a whole group of characters. I know I didn't tell you yet, but Mr. Alex Schweitzer, those
Really?
who are Stony Brook affiliated and know him pretty well, he actually wanted to get on this. He texted me about it after watching the first one. He wanted to get on this. So certainly he is going to be the next one. If not, also Joe DeBlasi is always
That's
a
two great guys
possibility.
right there.
So there's only a few people who have any idea of who those people are, but you'll certainly get to know them as we do more of these episodes. So again, people who watch today, thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed the revamped version, quick to the point, a lot different from the podcast. You get to see us, everything's a lot quicker. And please give us a like, share it. We're gonna put it on our Anchor and our Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. But again, take a listen to Mike's podcast as well. I'll put the link to that in the description. Now I'm sounding like a real
Really?
YouTuber now,
Yeah, I
real
like it.
YouTuber. But thank you all for listening, and we'll be speaking to you all next week.